Hi, my name is Shahireh Sharif, and today I'm here to tell you a little bit about this book, Shahnameh, a book of poetry written over 1,000 years ago by Ferdowsi, a Persian poet. This book contains many stories, all with universal human values. That's why reading it, particularly now, is timely and is important. It reminds us that we are all human, we are all similar to one another. Despite the little differences that we see, we are all the same. So welcome to Shahnameh, more than a book of kings. Over a millennium ago, in year 940 in Pazh, on the outskirts of the city of Tous in northeastern Iran, a boy was born. His family were landowners, which meant they could afford spending money on this little boy's education. We know him as Hakim Abul Qasim Ferdowsi, one of the most important people when it comes to keeping the Persian language and culture alive. Ferdowsi in 977 embarked on a journey that took him 30 to 35 years to complete. The journey was all about writing a book, Shahnameh. Shahnameh is a long poem consisting of over 60,000 rhyming couplets, 50,000 of which are considered authentic. Shahnameh is based on stories written previously in prose in old languages like Pahlavi, which were dying off. Ferdowsi also used 1,000 verses written by another poet, Daqiqi, and had access to other verbal sources for writing his Shahnameh. By preserving many mythical and historical events of the golden days of Persia, Shahnameh is the national epic of Greater Iran, which has survived till today. Shahnameh starts in the mythical time of creation of the earth, goes through emergence of plants, animals, and humans. It tells the story of the rise and fall of many dynasties in Iran and ends with the Arabs' conquest of Iran in the 7th century. The poem covers many events such as discovery of fire, formation of textile, building cities, and social class division. The story and the characters are an intertwined mix of real historical and mythical events and figures. Shahnameh in English is translated to the Book of Kings. Shahnameh is also a fantastic reference for costumes and events, such as an insight into income tax in different periods, designs of flags, the type of punishments for different crimes, and description of marriage and burial ceremonies. Keeping the past alive would have been enough to make Shahnameh important as the essence and soul of Iran, although that is not the only thing that this literary masterpiece is about. Ferdowsi's message for humanity as a whole throughout the poem makes Shahnameh a book that is still relevant, timely, and important. Some lead characters in Shahnameh are women or people with dual nationality and people forced to migrate. These are independent, strong characters pushing the stories forward, which we don't often see in all the stories. In Shahnameh, we see how different nations from different religions, ethnicity, and cultural background coexist. Sir Edmund Gosse, 1849 till 1928, an English poet, names Ferdowsi as the greatest poet whom the world had. And in his poem Ferdowsi in Exile, Edmund Gosse goes on to say that Ferdowsi's word in Farsi sounds like whispering leafage when it rains. For writing Shahnameh, Ferdowsi was promised 1 dinar, a gold coin, for each rhyming couplet. But on completing the work, instead he was given 1 dirham, a silver coin. Ferdowsi didn't see this as a fair value for his hard work over 3 decades. He gives all the money as a tip to bath attendants, but by doing that, he offends Sultan Mahmud, which orders Ferdowsi to be arrested and killed. Ferdowsi goes in hiding until finally he returns to his birthplace and dies there in 1020, exactly 1,000 years ago. Meanwhile, Sultan Mahmud had a change of heart. He sees they have shortchanged Ferdowsi and sends him the gold that was due to him. Ferdowsi sadly never sees this gold. The story goes that as the caravan of gold enters the city, Ferdowsi's body is taken out of the city to be buried. The money therefore is given to Ferdowsi's daughter, and on her refusal to accept the money, it ends in the governor's hand and he spends it to repair a major breach. So the work of Ferdowsi helps people from his hometown too. The story, however, is now debated by scholars, but nevertheless, a lot of people still hangs on to it, and each generation tells that to the next. I've chosen the story of Zal and Rudabe. They are Rostam's parents, and Rostam is the biggest hero of Shahnameh. To see his parents' story, we need to travel back in time, and I'll take you to the room that Zal has just been born. Both mother and the baby are healthy and fine, but everyone around them, they are so scared and they don't know what to do. No one wants to take the news of this little boy being born to his father. His father is Sam, one of the biggest army officer of Iran. He has everything that he could wish for apart from a child. And now his son is born. So you might ask why everyone is hesitating to take the news to him. That's because this little boy, although he is very beautiful and healthy, is different. In what way? He's got white hair, white eyelashes, and white eyebrows. Everyone is scared that how his father is going to react to this. They hide the news of this baby being born for about a week. But then finally, one of the women present at birth says, "We cannot keep this secret forever. We need to go and tell him." So he travels all the way to where Sam, this baby's father, is, and give him the news. God has given you a healthy, beautiful little boy. The only thing is, he's got white hair. And that's not a big issue, is it? Sam hurries back home and sees the baby. He looks at the baby and says, "I'm one of the biggest officers of the army. How can I introduce this creature as my boy? He looks different. He's not like us. He's got white hair. Who has ever heard of a little baby with white hair? This is a sign of demon. I will have nothing to do with this little baby." So he gives the baby away to one of his footmen and asks him to take the baby away. He takes the baby to Alborz mountain and leaves the baby there. This poor baby is hungry, he's scared, and he's cold. He's crying, but there is nobody around to hear his cry. Finally, Seymour, the mythical bird of Shahnameh, appears on the sky, and on hearing this little baby's voice cry, Seymour comes down, takes the baby, and carries the baby all the way to her nest. Her chicks start playing with the baby, and Seymour's maternal instinct kicks in. She decides to keep this little baby. So she keeps that baby as one of her own. In stories with similar context from different cultures, we have got similar stories, but it's usually an animal like a dog or a wolf who takes the baby, and hence they can take care of the baby, they can feed the baby. But here we have got a bird. Let's see how the storytellers of the past have dealt with this problem. So every time Seymour goes out hunting, a piece of meat is taken apart and put in the baby's mouth, and the baby sucks on blood. And that's how this little baby survives. Many years pass, and travelers to and from Alborz talk about a little baby and then a teenager who lives amongst animals and got long white hair. Nobody knows who this little boy is, but some knows. He knows instantly that it's his own little boy that everyone is talking about. That night when he sleeps, he dreams. A wise man comes to his sleep and tells him, that boy was a gift from the God, and you threw him away. You did something that even animals don't do with their own little ones. If you think white hair is a sign of demon, look at yourself now. Your hair has turned white. Are you a demon now? He wakes up with a fright. He knows instantly that he needs to go and find that baby. So he starts his search. He goes to Alborz. He goes on top of the mountain for as far as it's possible for a human being to get. But he gets to a point that he could no longer carry on. He starts praying. He cries and prays to the God. به رحمت برافراز این بنده را، به من بازده پور افکنده را. چو با داور این رازها گفته شد، نیایش همانگه پذیرفته شد. As he's crying, Seymour hears him, and he goes to Zal and say, listen, your father is here for you. I'm going to take you to your father, and you're going to go and live with humans. He goes, I don't want to go. I don't know him. I want to stay with you. Why do you want to send me away? Have you had enough of me? And Seymour responds, I would love for you to stay, just like any parents would. But it's time for you to go. And it's best for you to go and live with humans. But don't worry, I'm going to give you some of my feathers. If ever there is a problem, if they try to harm you in any way, just burn one of these feathers and instantly I'll come and rescue you. I will take you back here. So Seymour carries all to his father, and his father takes him back to the city where they live. Everybody is happy for them, but it's a lot of hard work for Zal. There are a lot that he needs to learn. He needs to learn their way of life. He needs to learn about their religion, their way of hunting and riding. There is a period of learning, but he goes through it all. He wants to be accepted in the society. He wants to be like everyone else, and he tries so hard. At the presence of his father, everybody is kind to him. There are lots of people who love him and accept him, but the fact that he was born with white hair, different to everyone else, the fact that his upbringing was different to everyone else, somehow haunts him throughout his life. And even when he is an old man, other people refer to him as a witch or as someone who has been taken by a bird and spent his childhood in a nest. So this stays with him forever. But he grows to become one of the heroes of Iran, and he also is the father of Rostam, savior of Iran. Okay, so Zal is accepted now as a member of the society. For being accepted, he needs to go through certain tests as well. Just to give you an example, one of the tests that he had to pass to become accepted is responding and solving a few riddles. I'm just telling you one of the riddles. He's asked, there are two horses, one white, one black. They're just running one after another, constantly running, but they never reach each other. They never reach their destination. Tell us about these horses. And he goes, you're now talking about day and night, that they're constantly moving. One is coming after the other, but they never meet. So that's some of the tests that he had to go through. Okay, one of the things that he needed to do was collecting the tax of Kabul on behalf of his father. So he travels to Kabul, and outside the city, in his tent, he waits. Mehrab, the king of Kabul, brings the tax to him. And he is curious. He wants to know what he looks like. This young man who was grown up with a beard. When he sees him, he's very surprised because he realizes that he is someone like him. He doesn't look different. They start talking and they become friends with one another. So he tells Zal, I want you to come to my house and be my guest. But Zal says, I have no order in coming to your house. My order was just to come here, get the tax and come back. And I also know that you are practicing paganism. And I'm sure our king won't be happy if I come to your house. Mehrab doesn't say anything, but in his mind, he says to himself, and your religion is napak din. That means a religion that is not pure, is not clean. So they have got different ideas about each other's religion, and they know they're supposed to stay apart from each other. Mehrab goes back to his own house, palace. His wife Sindukh starts asking questions. Tell us about Zal. What did he look like? Does he understand our language? Can he talk as a person? Does he live in a tent like any normal human being or not? And Mehrab says, I found him quite normal actually, and he's so handsome. Sindukh says, but he's got white hair. Mehrab says, so? It's very becoming of him actually. He is ever so handsome and powerful. And as he starts explaining what Zal looked like, Rudabeh, his daughter, is also hearing this. And by hearing about Zal, she falls in love with this man. She goes back and tells her servants that I'm in love with this man. And her servants, actually Nadims, the persons who were taking care of her, they say, why would you want him with who you are, who your father is, and what you look like? You can have everyone that you could wish for. Why would you want to have someone that even his father threw him away? Rudabe gets angry and say, I'm in love with him, not what he looks like, what he represents, or the color of his hair. And when they realize that Rudabe is very much in love, they promise to help her. They go to Zal and start talking about Rudabe, how beautiful she is, and eventually they manage to drag Zal, or they manage to persuade Zal to go to the palace at night to see Rudabe. That night, Zal goes to the palace and sees Rudabe, who's standing on the balcony of the palace. Rudabe had long hair, so she throws her hair over the balcony and tells Zal to grab the hair and come up the wall to meet her. And Zal says, oh, but I'm going to hurt you that way. You stand back, I've got rope, I throw my rope and come and see you. So they see each other, very much become in love with one another, and they promise to get married. Against whatever their community, their leaders, their parents believed in. After a while, this secret is out and everybody knows that they want to get married. Nobody is happy. Mehrab, Rudabe's father, is very scared, saying, they're different. We shouldn't even get mixed with them. And Sam, Zal's father, is also saying, they're from different race, different religion, and the king would not accept it. And the king is offended as well, because saying, someone from the country that pays tax to us has dared to want to marry one of my major officers in the army. It won't do. We're going to go to war. So he starts gathering an army for attacking Kabul to teach him a lesson that they have crossed the line. Everybody is worried, is angry. Zal talks to Sam and Rudabe talks to her parents. No one is sure what to do. Meanwhile, Sindocht, Rudabe's mother, gathers a few presents and jumps on a horse and goes all the way to see Sam. When she sees Sam, she says, these presents are from Mehrab, and if he's done wrong, punish him. Why do you want to start a war? A lot of innocent people would be killed. And these are people who believe in you, who respect you, who pay their taxes. Why would you want to kill them? Killing innocent people is not a wise thing to do. Sam doesn't know what to do. If he accepts the presents, the king will be angry with him. And if he doesn't accept their presents, Zal would be angry with him. So he's confused. He doesn't know what to do. So he asked Sindoch, what sort of custom is that? How come they're sending a woman? Who are you anyway? Sindocht says, I am actually Rudabe's mother, the girl that your son is very much in love with. And they start talking, and Sindoch says, even though we are from two different backgrounds, two different religions, we all believe in the same God. There shouldn't be a war between us. Sam is inspired with the word of Sindocht. So at that moment, he decides to go and have a word with the king. So he goes and explains to the king how Zal feels and beg him to let him get married. And in that way, the king decides that it's okay for them to get married and there'll be no war between the two countries because they wanted to get married. And in that way, the wisdom of a woman is used to stop, to prevent a war. And when we think about today and the number of politicians and leaders that we have, the number of women politicians and leaders. Maybe it's something to think about. Maybe it's something that we need in this current time. Okay, now Rudabe and Zal, they have married and their baby is about to be born. It's a big baby and Rudabe was in trouble from the early time of pregnancy. But now that the baby is about to be born, she's not in a good shape at all. Everyone is worried. Sindocht, her mother, is crying, thinking that Rudabe is not going to survive this birth. Zal goes and burns one of the Simurgh's feather, and Simurgh comes to their rescue. So Zal says, help us, we don't know what to do. Simurgh says, don't worry, you don't need to panic, this is a natural process, and your boy is going to be healthy and is going to be the biggest hero of Iran. So don't worry about that at all. Just do as I'm telling you. So they bring wine and give wine to Rudabe until she is unconscious. Then Simurgh asked a wise person to come and follow her orders. The orders were, first of all, cut the side of Rudabe's stomach and pull the baby out. Once the baby is out, the ashes made from burning my feather mixed in with some herbal remedy that I'm telling you, try to cover the wound and make that heal. They do the same. Rostam is born. Rudabe is unconscious for a day. After one day, she comes round and she realizes that the birth is over. She's now got a healthy baby. The first thing that she says is Berastam, which means I have survived, I have escaped. And they call that baby Rostam. And he grows up to be a big hero of Shahnameh. Incidentally, this is the first time that we see where there is mention of cesarean, where both mother and baby have survived. In some of the paintings before then, we have got this act of cesarean, but it's always the case of baby surviving and the mother dying. So it's important because it's the first time that there is mention of cesarean where both mother and baby survive. ز یزدان و از ما بر آن کس درود که تارش خرد باشد و داد پوست. اگر پیشه دارد دلت راستی چنان دان که گیتی بیاراستی. سپردن به فرهنگ فرزند خرد که گیتی به نادان نشاید سپرد. نیابد کسی چاره از چنگ مرگ چو باد خزان است و ما همچو برگ. گشاده دلان را بود بخت یار انوشه کسی کو بود بردبار. چنین هم نگهدار تن در خورش نباید که بگزایدت پرورش. ستوده تر آن کس بود در جهان که نیکی کند آشکار و نهان. چو خرسند باشی تن آسان شوی چو آز آوری زو هراسان شوی. که روزی فراز است و روزی نشیب گهی با خرامیم و گه با نهیب. منش پست و کم دانش آن کس که گفت منم کم ز گیتی نیست جفت. Thank you for listening. It's been an honor to be here and introduce Shahnameh to you. Stories like stories from Shahnameh with universal human values reminds us that we are all human. We have a lot in common, a lot more than what we think we have. And it's interesting that instead of highlighting our differences, we think about our similarity. We are all human beings, and we could live in peace and harmony together. And that's the main lesson that I would love to be taken out of this session. Thank you for listening.